Let us execute an immediate, sweeping, analytical vector shift away from the elite media broadcasting networks, deep childhood psychological fragmentation, and intensive care ward traps of urban unreliability suspense, and plunge straight into the high-octane, calculation-heavy tracking grids of snowbound Maine wilderness corridors, weaponized geographical isolation, and the fiercely protective, dangerously fragile world of an endangered maternal survivor asset running a raw, tactical survival loop. We are crossing the threshold directly into the hyper-monitored, sub-zero perimeters of a remote woodland territory, exploring the lethal analytical parameters of an intense, trust-shattering deception matrix with The Crash, the exceptional, pulse-pounding structural masterpiece engineered by the absolute, undisputed sovereign of neck-snapping domestic twists, claustrophobic cabin lock-ins, and high-velocity survival paranoia, Freida McFadden. This high-stakes narrative tracking sequence delivers an exceptional look at an operational crossroads where a fierce, heavily pregnant female asset running an unyielding safety loop, an encroaching, deceptively charitable couple asset running a high-stakes proximity tracking routine, and an absolute defense of an unborn child's final survival metrics collide at terminal velocity. Let us map the strategic narrative grid. If you are an elite enthusiast of high-octane, slow-burn psychological thrillers where an endangered, hyper-observant female protagonist must navigate an absolute maze of rigged medical pretenses, corrupt fraternal alliances, and a deadly ring of active vehicular tampering cover-ups while running a blind survival loop inside a completely compromised frozen ecosystem, where an analytical mind uses deep behavioral profiling, calculated architectural boundaries, and absolute emotional stamina to outmaneuver an invisible predatory else network, and where the author utilizes an incandescent, 8 months pregnant woman crashes her car in a blizzard and is rescued by a former nurse with a makeshift basement hospital room and a sinister agenda diagnostic routine to test our hero's structural limits, this book is engineered to lock you in. McFadden completely dominates the high-precision, snowbound captivity meets suffocating maternal instinct puzzles dynamic, capturing the heart-racing intellectual momentum, suffocating domestic paranoia, and heavy deductive depth popularized by genre vargs like Stephen King, Misery, Gillian Flynn, Karen Slaughter, and B.A. Paris, while treating realistic orthopedic trauma logistics, complex psychological displacement alignment arcs, and protective high-density psychological extraction grids with absolute technical mastery. The narrative tracking grid zeroes in on the highly volatile, calculation-heavy baseline of our central legendary powerhouse asset, Tegan Werner, operating under a severe, calculation-heavy handicap of an advanced 8-month pregnancy, a severe ankle fracture, and a total communications blackout within an unfamiliar rural jurisdiction. Behind Tegan's rigorous supermarket database footprints and tense personal history logs lies an intricate matrix of hidden faction allegiances, deeply bearing high society crimes, and sharp, high-stakes tactical maneuvers. Her collective defense mechanisms are locked down tight behind a lifetime of working grueling double shifts to maintain an independent profile, and surviving complex emotional ambushes, her entire analytical focus strictly consumed by monitoring sudden threat vectors from a ruthless corporate predator who violated her security metrics, parsing complex behavioral shifts from her host couple, and shielding her vulnerable unborn child node from being entirely wiped out by a ruthless elite cleanup offensive. The spark ignites when an unexpected high-frequency structural anomaly breaches her active scanning perimeter. A desperate flight toward her buffer sanctuary coordinates terminates in a catastrophic high-impact vehicular trajectory failure during an unmapped blizzard, instantly cross-referencing the desolate Maine landscape with a high-level calculated malice. As the freezing conditions threaten total physical deletion, she is extracted by a hulking local operator named Hank and placed within the private domestic enclosure of his wife Polly, a former clinical nurse asset running an increasingly unstable psychological program. The official diagnostic metrics of the global tracking centers flash white-hot when alternating first-person perspective logs between Tegan and Polly reveal that the basement medical ward setup is not an act of routine emergency hospitality, but a capsulated proximity containment matrix designed to seize Tegan's maternal asset data. The standard boundaries of civilian roadside assistance and peaceful neighborly compliance protocols crumble, and our central protagonists run completely out of standard diplomatic escape factors. They are thrust directly into an active, invisible war across the cabin floors, where deceptive caretakers masking their true tracking coordinates, a volatile neighbor faction, and a calculation-heavy fraternal shadow network launch aggressive countermeasures to permanently suppress our survival data stream. The tactical parameters instantly explode as their historical and survival warfare turns completely active, transforming the isolated basement enclosures, dark snowy driveways, and private fortified residential rooms into a volatile psychological pressure cooker and a physical battle zone. Our protective, hyper-vigilant heroine is forced to deploy her massive intuitive twive-trad, elite behavioral mapping skills, and raw maternal stamina to preserve her focus before Polly's relentless, calculation-heavy proximity containment phase permanently deletes her boundaries. The primary adversary remains purposeful and resolute, determined to deploy deep geographical insulation, continuous psychological manipulation loops, and a threat of physical erasure to break her defense, only to realize her hardened survival protocols and shifting counter-narratives match their raw tactical speed step for step. every midnight archival memory excavation regarding a signature cologne scent, every silent choice to stand off against an encroaching adversary behind standard internal barriers, and every intense moment of channeling raw, unyielding survival mechanics chips away at her reliance on original peaceful rules. What follows is an exceptional high-stakes war of perspective, tactical position, and raw human grit. We watch the rural elite's deceptive perimeters completely unwrapped as Freida McFadden reveals that the true victory requires more than just surviving an initial automotive impact or managing a difficult labor sequence. It demands an absolute, uncompromising defense of individual dignity, personal truth, and systemic survival against a cold, calculating machine of domestic manipulation and psychopathic supremacy. While our central characters smooth over each other's psychological and defensive blind spots with devastating analytical force, creating a fiercely protective, absolute web of dark possessive loyalty around their shared perimeter, a brutal series of close-quarters tactical confrontations and high-stakes evidentiary breakthroughs shifts the cloth into its terminal phase, proving that historical emotional hazards have tracked them to their final outpost. To survive the impending locked grid trap and permanently secure her sanctuary, our resilient heroine must unleash an absolute, unyielding defense of her final boundary lines. It is a psychological thriller, snowbound suspense noir, captivity mystery, and high-velocity contemporary puzzle masterpiece that treats deep relational logistics and intense structural friction with elite precision. The tension here burns with a sharp, calculation-heavy intensity. We are talking about that high-frequency, one-severed landline triggers a fatal basement extraction showdown energy, where a sudden pause during an active franchise tactical briefing, an unexpected shift in an adversary's protective physical posture during a high-stakes standoff confrontation, or a heavy, possessive realization that an elite intelligence operative has completely mapped your personal coordinates carries massive structural weight. McFadden writes with an exceptionally fresh, vivid, and beautifully blunt voice, perfectly capturing the heavy, oppressive atmosphere of a private executive vault before a major corporate takeover, and the distinct, subtle scent of polished mahogany, freezing wood smoke, sterile clinical gauze, damp basement concrete, dynamic adrenaline, spilled copper, and pure, unadulterated suspense. What truly elevates this contemporary standalone marvel into elite territory is the author's unmatched ability to balance complex, high-stakes relationship dynamics and genuine protective power tradecraft alongside a breathtaking narrative pace and deep emotional hooks. Our protagonists don't rely on unbelievable superficial Hollywood superhero action tropes. Their immense situational intelligence, strategic patience, and profound survival instincts match the complexity of the chaotic modern corporate and high society underworld they dominate step for step, making their choices to risk everything feel profoundly authentic and deeply gripping. The pacing moves with calculated momentum, tracking intense conversational standoffs and breathtaking tactical breakthroughs before ratcheting up to an absolute jaw-dropping conclusion that delivers total, hard-earned advancement to their horizon. The Crash is the definitive pro-level upgrade your high-stakes contemporary thriller and intense asset suspense library demands right now. It is elegant, immensely fast-paced, and utterly unputdownable. It proves that when your entire sanctuary is targeted by a cold, calculating institutional monster, the most revolutionary play you can execute is to lock your perimeters, trust your elite survival training, and fight like hell onside your network to rewrite the data. So secure your personal reading sanctuary, review your emotional defensive perimeters, open your Kindle, and prepare to track the fleet.